Jax's revenge domain. I knew it was over when Jessica Parker walked into the conference room without making eye contact. That polished smile, fresh MBA confidence, sitting across from me like I was a line item she needed to delete. The name's Richard Coleman, 57 years old, and I'd just spent 22 years building the software that made manufacturing tech solutions worth a damn. She opened my termination folder like she was ordering lunch. Richard, you've done solid work here, really, but we're streamlining operations for our IPO timeline. We need people who can adapt to rapid scaling. That corporate smile never touched her eyes. If you're not comfortable with our new direction, we completely understand. You know the type. McKinsey background, private equity's golden child, thinks leadership means using words like synergy and operational efficiency. Jessica Parker was 38 years old and had never spent a day on a factory floor. But she had connections with the PE firm that bought us out last year and orders to cut 40% of the workforce before going public. I felt this dead calm settle over me, looked at the photo on my desk. Sarah and me at last year's company picnic, 6 months before the cancer took her. Half the engineers in that picture, I'd hired and trained myself. I remembered staying late with them through system crashes, living on vending machine coffee and determination. Missing my daughter's graduation because our automotive client's entire production line depended on our predictive maintenance algorithm working flawlessly. Sarah had understood. She always understood. Now this kid was handing me a severance package and corporate talking points about workforce optimization. Like my 22 years meant nothing. Like the foundation I'd built could just be replaced by some fresh college grads who knew the latest programming languages but had never seen a factory floor. We're offering a generous package, Jessica continued, sliding papers across the table. 6-month severance, continuation of benefits, and positive references for future opportunities. Future opportunities. At 57. In tech. Right. I closed my laptop, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked out. Past my team, past the glass offices full of people pretending not to notice, past HR, past the lobby where Stephen Kane's portrait still hung from when this was a family company. His grandfather had started this place in 1955, building custom automation for local manufacturers. His father expanded it statewide. Stephen took it national before the private equity buyout. Now it was just another portfolio company with a quarterly earnings target. No one said a word. Nobody stood up. Nobody asked questions. Nobody even said goodbye. That silence was heavy. It pulled everything down with it: respect, loyalty, history. But here's what people don't understand about guys like me. Sometimes silence is strategy. I didn't go home right away. Went to Murphy's Diner down the street, got black coffee and a moment to think. You know Murphy's, red vinyl booths, waitresses who've been there since the Clinton years, coffee strong enough to wake the dead, same booth where Sarah and I used to grab lunch when she'd visit the office, where I'd celebrated every promotion, every major contract win, every milestone that mattered. I sat there and just breathed, not raging, not planning anything dramatic, just thinking about the road that led here. Manufacturing tech had been my whole adult life since leaving the Marines. 4 years active duty, then college on the GI Bill, computer science degree from a state school nobody would call prestigious. Joined manufacturing tech in 1999 when we were still a 50-person family operation. Stephen Kane himself interviewed me, asked more about my military experience than my programming skills. We work with manufacturers, he'd said, people who build real things with their hands. I need someone who understands that world, not just the code that runs it. Understood it. Grew up in a blue-collar family. My dad worked at the GM plant before it closed. Knew what it meant when production lines went down, when equipment failures cost jobs. That's why I built the predictive maintenance algorithm, not just to prevent breakdowns, but to save livelihoods. Over 22 years, I'd watched us grow through acquisitions to 800 employees and $85 million in annual revenue. 3 major automotive manufacturers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, depended on our system to predict equipment failures before they happened, saved them millions in downtime, kept thousands of workers employed. My algorithm was the foundation, the core. 35% of company revenue flowed directly from contracts built on code I'd written, debugged, and refined over 2 decades. Every enhancement, every adaptation, Every custom implementation had my fingerprints on it. But I didn't document everything like some fresh college grad might. I lived that software. It wasn't in a manual somewhere. It was in my head, built over years of late nights and impossible client deadlines, the institutional knowledge that made the difference between a working system and elegant solution. Sarah used to joke that I was married to two things, her and that algorithm. She wasn't wrong. Even on family vacations, I'd get calls from the engineering team. System hiccups, integration problems, client customization requests that only I could handle. Sarah would roll her eyes, hand me my laptop and say, "Make it quick." I miss that. I miss her understanding. I miss having someone who knew why the work mattered. I paid Murphy in cash, walked home to Rex barking his welcome. My lab looked up cautious. Dogs know when something fundamental shifts in their world. The house felt different without Sarah, but now it felt empty in a new way, like everything familiar was disappearing piece by piece. I set the termination folder on my kitchen table, poured 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff Sarah bought me for my 55th birthday, and opened the safe I hadn't touched in years. Time to see what cards I actually held. Buried beneath tax returns and expired warranties was a manila envelope I hadn't looked at in years. No label, just the weight of foresight and old habits. Inside was the original patent application, filed in my name during the chaos of our 2015 restructuring when the Kane family was preparing to sell. Kevin Martinez, my college roommate turned IP attorney, had advised me to hold the rights until legal got sorted. We'd been Marines together, roommates at state, best man at each other's weddings. Kevin understood the value of covering your 6. "Richard," he'd said over beers at O'Malley's in 2015, "file it under your name. You can always assign it later when things stabilize." I remember that conversation like it happened yesterday. Sarah was still healthy then, still bringing me sandwiches during late coding sessions. The company was growing fast. Legal department was overwhelmed with acquisition paperwork, and intellectual property transfers kept getting pushed down the priority list. "What if they never formalize it?" I'd asked. "Then you own the patent that runs their entire business," Kevin had said with that lawyer smile. "Insurance policy. They never got stable. They just got profitable." The temporary agreements kept extending quarter after quarter, year after year. Legal kept saying they'd handle the final transfer after the next funding round, then after the Series B, then after the PE buyout. But nobody followed up because I was never going anywhere. I was the foundation guy, the reliable old dog who kept the lights on while executives collected bonuses. Sarah used to tease me about it. "Your little insurance policy," she'd call it. "Like you're planning to hold them hostage someday." "Just being careful," I'd tell her. "You're always careful, sometimes too careful." Maybe she was right. Maybe I should have trusted them more. But sitting in my kitchen, reading the original patent filing dated August 15th, 2015, I was grateful for that paranoia. Patent number US 9,847,253. Predictive maintenance algorithm for industrial equipment manufacturing. Inventor and applicant, Richard J. Coleman. The formal assignment of rights had always been in process. A legal limbo that everyone assumed would eventually resolve. Manufacturing tech had been operating under licensing agreements that gave them usage rights, not ownership. Standard practice during transitions, except the transition never ended. I opened my laptop and pulled up the original agreement Kevin had drafted. Legal language, but the key clause was buried on page 12 like a time bomb. In the event of involuntary termination of inventor without documented cause, all licensing rights shall revert to inventor within 90 days of formal termination notice. Kevin had insisted on that clause. Corporate protection, he'd called it. Make sure they can't just steal your work and kick you out. 8 years. 8 years that clause had been sitting there, and nobody at Manufacturing Tech ever bothered to read the fine print. Why would they? I was never leaving. I was the guy who came in early, stayed late, fixed problems without being asked. The institutional memory that made everything work. Until Jessica decided I was legacy overhead. I read the clause 3 more times, checking dates and conditions. Involuntary termination without cause. Check. They'd fired me for streamlining, not performance issues. Formal termination notice? Check. Had the paperwork in my kitchen. 90-day window. Clock started ticking the moment I walked out. Every line of code running in their automotive contracts was now legally trespassing on my property, but I needed verification. I opened encrypted email to Kevin. Subject line, need urgent legal review. Attached scans of the 2015 filing and the termination paperwork. Kevin called me back within 2 hours, which was fast for a partner. At a major firm. Richard, I've been reviewing the documents. This is still completely valid. You sure? Dead certain. If they terminated you today without cause, you've got 90 days to formalize reversion. After that, any use of the algorithm without your permission is patent infringement. I could hear papers rustling on his end. Kevin was methodical. Reason he'd made it from Marine lieutenant to partner at Morrison, Wells and Associates. He didn't give legal opinions based on wishful thinking. What's this patent worth to them? He asked. About 35% of total company revenue, maybe more. 3 major automotive contracts depend entirely on my algorithm. Ford alone is paying $12 million annually for a 5-year contract that renews next year. Long pause. Richard, you kept this clause active for 8 years. That's either paranoid or brilliant. Sarah always said I was too careful. Sarah was wrong. This time, careful might make you rich. The USPTO filing system was surprisingly straightforward. Kevin had prepared reversion templates back in 2015, standard legal documents for exactly this scenario. I filled out the formal reversion request form. No drama, just quiet checkboxes and digital signatures. Patent holder, Richard J. Coleman. Reason for reversion. Involuntary termination without cause per agreement clause 12.3. Supporting documentation. Termination letter dated yesterday, original licensing agreement, patent filing. I paused before hitting submit. Once I clicked that button, everything changed. Manufacturing tech would wake up tomorrow morning legally squatting on technology they no longer owned. Every demo, every client call, every contract renewal would become potential infringement. But they'd made the choice for me when Jessica handed me that folder. Click, submit. Patent ownership reverted to Richard J. Coleman, effective immediately. The USPTO would publish the update within 48 hours, but the change was legally binding from the moment I filed. I called Kevin back. It's done. Reversion filed, confirmed. Patent US 9,847,253 now belongs to me again. Richard, you realize what this means? They can't demo that algorithm, can't use it in client presentations, can't even run routine maintenance without your permission. Any use without licensing is willful infringement, I know, and they have a big Ford demo scheduled for Monday, don't they? I'd forgotten Kevin still had friends in the legal department. News travels fast in professional circles. Yeah, Jessica's been preparing for weeks. Whole Ford engineering team flying in to see our proprietary technology. Kevin's laugh was dark. Not so proprietary anymore. Richard, you just took control of their entire automotive division. What happens if they proceed with the demo? Public demonstration of technology they don't own? That's willful infringement with witnesses. Triple damages if it goes to court. And if they try to claim they still own it, USPTO filing is public record. Ford will see your name as patent holder before Jessica even finishes her opening slide. I leaned back in my chair, bourbon warming in my hand, Rex curled against my leg like a silent conspirator. Across town, manufacturing tech's leadership was probably polishing their presentations, printing glossy materials, preparing to demonstrate technology that no longer belonged to them. They had no idea what was coming. The USPTO update went live Friday morning at 8:47 a.m. I know because I was refreshing the patent database every 20 minutes like some obsessed day trader watching stock prices. Patent number US 9,847,253. Owner change from Manufacturing Tech Solutions LLC to Richard J. Coleman. Date of change, reflecting my termination timestamp down to the minute. No red flags, no warning bells, just a quiet name change that would destroy a company if anyone bothered to look. But they weren't looking. They were busy. Jessica was in full preparation mode that week, according to Daniel Foster from development. Daniel still texted me occasionally. Not about work, just checking in. Good kid, one of the engineers I'd hired straight out of Purdue. I'd spent 6 months training him on manufacturing integration, explaining why automotive systems needed different approaches than consumer software. She's got the whole team working overtime for Monday's demo, Daniel texted Thursday afternoon. Pulling all-nighters to polish the UI. Marketing printed 200 brochures calling it our proprietary breakthrough technology. Feels weird without you here, Richard. Place isn't the same. I didn't reply right away. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder why the foundation guy had walked away so quietly. What they didn't understand was that I hadn't walked away. I just changed positions, from supporting player to puppet master, from employee to patent holder, from expendable to indispensable. Friday evening, I got a call from Stephen Kane, the founder who'd been pushed into emeritus status during the PE buyout. Stephen was old school, started the company with his father's machine shop loan, built it one client at a time. He'd interviewed me personally back in 1999, hired me based on a handshake and gut instinct about character. Richard heard what happened. I'm sorry, this wasn't how things were supposed to go. His voice carried genuine regret. Stephen understood what I'd built, what I'd contributed. He'd been in the trenches too, back when landing a $50,000 contract felt like winning the lottery. Just business, Stephen. Nothing personal. Still doesn't make it right. 22 years of loyalty should count for something. I almost told him then, almost explained what was coming Monday morning. But Stephen was a good man who'd been marginalized by the same system that had eliminated me. Better to let him discover the outcome than burden him with the knowledge. Take care of yourself, Richard. You built something special here. Don't let them make you forget that. The weekend crawled by. Rex and I took longer walks than usual, down to the lake where Sarah and I used to go on Sunday mornings. She'd pack coffee in a thermos. I'd bring my laptop for emergency calls that almost never came. We'd sit on the old wooden dock, her reading mystery novels while I pretended to work, but mostly just watched her read. You're staring again, she'd say without looking up, just appreciating the view. The lake's behind you. Not that view. I missed those conversations. The easy comfort of someone who knew your patterns, your moods, your terrible jokes. Sarah would have loved this whole situation. Not the revenge part, but the strategic patience. She'd always said I was at my best when I was thinking 3 moves ahead. Like chess, she'd told me once. You don't win by attacking everything that moves. You win by controlling the board. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves or excitement, just anticipation, like Christmas morning when you know exactly what's under the tree, but you still have to wait for everyone else to wake up. I sat in my kitchen with Bourbon and Rex at my feet, reading through the USPTO documentation one more time. Everything was clean. Kevin had filed all supporting paperwork, cross-referenced the original agreement, included termination documentation, no loopholes, no technicalities they could exploit. The patent reversion was ironclad. At 11 p.m., my phone buzzed with messages from the engineering team's group chat. Someone had added me back to the channel. Probably Daniel, trying to include me in what used to be my daily routine. Final system check complete. Demo environment stable. UI polish finished. Looks incredible. Ford team confirmed arrival at 9 a.m. Monday. Marketing setup starts 7 a.m. This is going to be huge. I read through their excitement, their pride in work that was about to become their nightmare. These were good engineers, most of them people I'd hired and trained. They believed they were showcasing their finest achievement. They had no idea they were about to demonstrate stolen property to their biggest client. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to warn them, to send some cryptic message that would make them dig deeper, ask questions. But that wasn't how this worked. You don't warn the crew when the captain steers into the iceberg. You let physics take its course. Instead, I typed, "Good luck tomorrow." Then I muted the channel. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, perfect weather for corporate disaster. I made coffee in Sarah's favorite mug, let Rex out for his morning routine, and settled in to wait for news. The demo was scheduled for 10 a.m. Kevin would arrive around 9:45 with the cease and desist documentation, giving Jessica just enough time to understand what was happening before the Ford team witnessed her public humiliation. At 8:30, Daniel texted, "Big day today. Ford engineering team just pulled into the parking lot. Jessica's been here since 6 a.m., rehearsing her presentation. Energy's crazy high. At 9:15, something weird happening. Lawyer just showed up, asking for Jessica. Not one of our usual guys. Security walked him straight to the conference center. At 9:32, holy shit, Richard, what the hell is going on?" I set my phone aside and walked to the window. Somewhere across town, manufacturing tech's leadership was learning that their crown jewel, their competitive advantage, their ticket to IPO success, had just been legally yanked out from under them by the guy they'd fired for being too old and too expensive. The Foundation was about to remind them why you don't demolish the architect's work while he's still alive. The call came at 10:18 a.m. Kevin's number, but I let it ring twice before answering. No need to seem eager. "Richard, it's done." "She knows. How'd she take it?" Kevin's laugh was dry as desert sand, about as well as you'd expect. Tried to argue it was a clerical error, then demanded to see the original agreements. When I showed her the reversion clause, she went pale as a ghost. "Ford team there yet?" "Front row, center seats, 12 people, including their head of manufacturing systems. They've got notebooks out, ready to take notes on technology that doesn't belong to manufacturing tech anymore." Through the phone, I could hear background noise, voices, shuffling papers, the nervous energy of a crowd sensing disaster before it fully hits. What happens now? Jessica's trying to delay, claiming technical difficulties, but Ford's legal counsel brought copies of the USPTO filings. They know exactly who owns patent US 9,847,253 now. The demo was supposed to last 30 minutes. Kevin texted me updates every few minutes like a war correspondent filing reports from the front lines. 10:25 a.m., Jessica attempting to proceed. Ford Legal stopped her before she reached the demonstration screen. 10:31 a.m., Ford team requesting explanation of patent ownership. Discrepancy. Jessica claiming it's a temporary administrative issue. 10:38 a.m., Ford Legal reading patent reversion clause out loud to the room. Jessica's face looks like she swallowed something toxic. 10:45 a.m., demo officially terminated. Ford team packing up. They're not happy about flying here for nothing. 11:02 a.m., emergency board meeting called. Stephen Kane just arrived looking confused and angry. By noon, my phone was buzzing like an angry wasp. Missed calls from the manufacturing tech executive team, HR, even some of the engineers. Text messages ranging from confused to panicked to furious. I didn't answer any of them. At 1:15 p.m., Stephen Kane called personally. "Richard, what the hell happened this morning? No pleasantries, no small talk, just raw bewilderment from a man watching his life's work implode in real time." "What did Jessica tell you?" I asked. "That there's some patent ownership dispute, that our IP attorney is claiming you own the predictive maintenance algorithm." "It's not a claim, Stephen. I do own it." Silence. Long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "That's impossible. You've been using that algorithm for manufacturing tech for 8 years, under a licensing agreement that reverted ownership when I was terminated without cause. Check clause 12.3 of the original IP transfer documentation from 2015. More silence. Stephen was old school, but he wasn't stupid. He understood contracts, understood legal implications. "Richard, that algorithm represents 35% of our annual revenue." "I know. I wrote it. The Ford contract alone. 12 million annually. I know that too. What do you want?" There it was. The question that mattered. Not threats, not legal posturing, not attempts to negotiate around the obvious. Stephen cut straight to the core because he knew I held all the cards. Licensing agreement. $4.2 million up front, plus 8% ongoing royalties on any contract that uses my algorithm. That's fair market rate for proprietary technology that generates $30 million in annual revenue. And? Stephen knew there was an and. There's always an and when someone has you over a barrel. Position as chief technology advisor, equity participation, public acknowledgement that I developed the core algorithm. Jessica will never agree to that. Then Jessica can explain to the board why manufacturing tech just lost its 3 biggest clients to patent infringement lawsuits. Another pause. In the background, I could hear voices, urgent conversations, the sound of a company in crisis mode. And Jessica? Reassigned outside the automotive division. She clearly doesn't understand manufacturing technology well enough to run that department. Richard, she's the CEO. Stephen, I'm the patent holder. Without my algorithm, your automotive division doesn't exist. Ford, GM, Stellantis, they're all using my code. Either we license it properly, or they find a new vendor. The negotiation took 3 days. Kevin handled the legal details while I waited at home, walking Rex and reading books Sarah had always wanted me to finish. Tuesday morning, Jessica tried to lowball with $2 million upfront and 4% royalties. I countered by scheduling patent infringement cease and desist letters to all 3 automotive clients. Wednesday afternoon, the PE firm's senior partner called personally. Mr. Coleman, we understand there's been a miscommunication regarding intellectual property ownership. No miscommunication, just poor record-keeping on your part. We're prepared to discuss reasonable licensing terms. I already provided reasonable terms. The offer expires Friday at 5 p.m. Thursday evening, Stephen called with acceptance. Full terms, no modifications. $4.2 million upfront payment, 8% ongoing royalties, chief technology advisor position with equity, public acknowledgement of my contributions, and Jessica's reassignment to a non-technical portfolio company. Friday morning, I walked back into manufacturing tech, not as Richard from engineering, but as Richard Coleman, CTO advisor and patent holder. The same lobby, same elevators, same conference rooms, but everything was different now. Daniel Foster was waiting by my new office, corner space with windows, executive parking spot, assistant if I wanted one. Richard, is it true? You actually owned that algorithm the whole time? I tried to assign it to the company years ago. Legal never followed through. So when Jessica fired you, the licensing agreement automatically terminated. Basic contract law. He shook his head, grinning. You played the long game perfectly. I didn't play anything, Daniel. I just read the paperwork they didn't bother to read. Some people call it revenge. I call it intellectual property law, because when you spend 22 years building something, you don't just walk away quietly. You make sure everyone remembers who really built the foundation. And sometimes the foundation remembers you back. Sometimes it comes home where it belongs, bringing market rate compensation and hard-earned respect along for the ride. Jessica's cleaning out her office today. Word is the PE firm found her a nice position managing cost optimization at a retail chain in Ohio. Nothing technical. Nothing she can break that I'd have to fix. I'm thinking Sarah would have enjoyed this ending. Strategic patience paying off exactly like she always said it would. Chess, not checkers. Control the board, win the game. Experience isn't just about knowing how to do the job. It's about knowing how to protect yourself when the job tries to do you. They thought age made me obsolete, but it actually made me dangerous. Because when you've been around long enough, you learn to read the fine print they don't even know exists.